Welcome to Fire Up Your Life with Tony Fitzgerald. Hi, this is Tony Fitzgerald. To my podcast today, I have Halley Young. Just got married, didn't you?
Sure did.
That's awesome.
Still getting used to the last name.
It was such a beautiful wedding, too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I love the pictures. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
3 whole months, 4 months almost. Going strong.
Oh, yeah. That's great. That's great. So I invited Halley on my podcast. She's going to be on it again. Well, this time, you know, Halley has some experience as a reporter, and she's just really great at getting information out of you and being able to ask the right questions. And I have a whole bunch of questions over the years that some people have asked me on my social media. Mm-hmm. And I figured it's a little bit harder to just read the questions and ask yourself. So, you know, Halley is here to ask me those questions so that I can answer.
And some of them, I feel like I'm going to learn a lot about you too, because I know you pretty well. And you've explained a lot of the answers to me. But I think people meeting you, knowing, you know, your podcast is called Fire Me Up, and I think people knowing your background, it's like how does being a firefighter and mortgages add up? So I think this is going to clear a lot up for people.
And they don't. And Halley and I know each other from BNI in Sarasota. So currently, she's the president of our BNI, and I'm the vice president of our BNI, and we get to see each other religiously every Wednesday.
Yep. Sit next to each other. You steal my pens.
And on that wonderful phone call on Thursdays too,
yes.
Right? So, yes.
Yes, good times. Yeah. All right, so should we just dive into it?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so first, kind of what I just touched on, can you give me the backstory on you being a firefighter, how you got into that, and then how you transitioned from that into doing mortgages and some of the motivational speaking that you're really starting to get into?
Well, it's a great question, and I do get asked that a lot, so that's great to be the first question. You know, when I was younger, I did a whole bunch of different things. That's another podcast for another time, but I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life, so I thought about joining the military, and I went into the Marine Corps delayed entry program, which was like 9 months out, and in the middle of that, I decided... well, you know, Tony, you decided that you have a fear of heights. When I was working at Comcast Cable, I realized that I went up this ladder, and it was very steep, and I realized I had a fear of heights. So I thought, okay, how can I get over some fears of going? I figured I had to get over some fears. I was 21 years old, and I joined the local volunteer fire department, which was behind my house as I grew up. And I watched them for years since I was a kid. And I decided to go join them and get over some fears. And at the time, you didn't have to have training to be, like state training to be a volunteer firefighter when I started at the time. And that was back in 1991, right? So you didn't have to be a volunteer firefighter. You didn't have to have training to be that. So we had OJT. Basically, you would go train. You would go to trainings every Thursday. And I think I was only trained maybe twice, just enough to know how to put on an air pack, and I got my very first call, and it was very first fire, and I jumped on with a brand new officer and a driver, and we got into the fire engine. And at the time, it was most fire engines have enclosed cabs now, but at the time it was an older truck that had an open cab. So I'm in the back, facing backward, riding backwards, open air, and that siren kicked off. And while we're driving, I saw this plume of smoke. And of course, you know, we know that it's devastating someone's house, but at the same time, the ability to go help someone in such a dire situation, my adrenaline just dumped. And I realized we got there, we went in, I put out the fire while everyone was searching for kids, and luckily it was everybody was out, and interesting, after the fire, the only thing that they lost was a lizard. And you could actually see the lizard
skeleton.
No, it was just the ashes. It was just the white ashes. So you learn so much by doing this stuff. There's so many things and experiences, and I realized right away this is what I wanted to do as my career. So I actually got out of the delayed entry program. I became a firefighter, I went to Fire Academy and I got hired first out of 100 applicants. And then I went to EMT school as well and became a firefighter. And it was a great time. I had some incredible experiences. Every time that I would find a fear, I would tackle it. That fear of heights, the very first night of Fire Academy, we had to climb up a 35-foot ladder. Well, the ladder was straight up in the air and it was held by ropes by your fellow students that you never met, and it was at night.
Talk about trust.
Right. Blind trust, right?
Blind trust.
And you had to climb all the way up, and you had no safety rope, 35 feet up in the air, and you had to put your feet over the top and walk down the other side, which people actually just left. They just left before they even did it, right? So it was very interesting. They don't do that anymore, right? I believe they call it a church raise. They don't do that anymore. But over the period of times, I learned I was a diver. I brought marine rescue to the fire department. I was believe it or not, confined space rescue expert, not expert. I was confined space rescue technician. I was hazmat technician, aerial operator. I used to climb that ladder truck every day to get rid of the fear of heights and I don't have a fear of water, but I have a fear of dying from drowning, right? So I just became the best at everything that I was afraid of. And over years, I spent 21 years at the City of Venice Fire Department in Venice, Florida. And it ended up being time to retire. Not necessarily really retire, but they were changing a bunch of benefits. And after a period of time, I realized, evaluating it was time to move on from that department. And I decided that, okay, I would retire, and then I would go become a district chief somewhere, a battalion chief, or a chief somewhere, and actually had submitted my application to a city up in Pinellas County up there in that area. And at the same time, during that time, I was shopping for a home. And I had met this loan officer who's a dear friend of mine today, Corey Banks. He's the one who actually got me into this business, and dear friend of mine. He helped us for a couple of years get us ready, and he had really great follow-up for us, and he just really aligned with us, and I was getting what they call an FHA 203K loan, which is a renovation loan. You basically find a house that really can't get financed without renovating, and it's an all-in-one loan, and that was my first one. I'd been a homeowner twice before, but this was the first time I ever did that. And I was retiring, I was getting this home, and I was putting him through the ringer with paperwork, and he said, and I was handling a lot of the stuff myself, and he said, I know you're leaving the fire department, and I'd like to grow, my team, and I'd really like you to consider working with me. And it was kind of comical at first for me, because it's just such a different thing. And I kick down doors and rescue babies. Mm-hmm. I owned a suit for an interview, and I just took mortgages as a banking thing and something that was really out of my realm. And obviously over the course of my life, anytime I ever wanted to learn something, I just dove in head first. So I actually applied for this other job, and I didn't get that first position. And what a rigorous examination. It was in person. It was live acting. It was an amazing experience. And I didn't get that first position. And I decided to go ahead with the loan officer. I got licensed, and I transferred in. And I made the commitment to go. And 3 months in, I got a call back from that same fire department that I had applied at, and they said, hey, the chief wants you to come in because another position has opened up. And I said, can I think about it? Because now I'd realized that maybe I am on a different road.
And that was only 3 months in.
3 months in. And I called back the next day, and I said, thank you. but I'm going to try this. So that is how I transitioned into this.
Yeah.
And it was, hey, here's your computer. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you're diving into something completely new, but only 3 months in, obviously something's keeping you there enough to the point where when this old job comes knocking on your door again, you're already like, no, I feel like I got to follow this. So what was it about those first 3 months that made you feel like maybe this is something I really want to do, or maybe this is something I'm going to be really good at?
Opportunity. It was the opportunity because, firefighters, they get paid okay. I won't complain. Of course, people, I think firefighters should be compensated well like teachers. But in order to make more money as a firefighter, you just have to work more hours. And that's all I knew. And this was a straight 100% commission job. And it was eat what you kill, right? And that was so foreign to me. But what I realized is if I could get good at it, the benefits would be, you couldn't weigh them, right? So I just set myself to that goal of getting as good as I could in this business and seeing where it would take me. Because if you work smarter, not harder, like in this business, I mean, you'd have to work hard. But you just, if you do it right, it's not just about getting more hours.
Right. So it's interesting because when you first explained why you became a firefighter, you were only 20 years old and you were thinking about, this is a fear of mine. I want to conquer this fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know many 20-year-olds that have that mindset, like, I'm scared of this, I'm going to run towards it, not away from it. And so was there any of that going into this new thing with that kind of like eat what you kill? Like, I'm my own boss, which is awesome, but I have to hold myself accountable, which is scary.
Sure. There's no future income.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no future income unless you do it. So that was a little bit fearful. And just being in a new world that I'd never been in was also scary. And 6 months in, I had a major identity crisis, and I had a panic attack laying in the middle of the bed at night. And, firefighter EMT, I knew, the signs of a heart attack, but I also been trained in coping with panic for like confined space rescue, phobic wave, things like that are pretty high level stuff. And that's what I've always done. I've tried to go to the high level. But I'm laying there in bed with chest pain and shortness of breath, realizing that I wasn't a firefighter anymore. And my identity had been so much into the firefighter, hence my logo, right?
Yeah, for 2 decades.
Yeah. And I had to determine whether I needed to call 911 or if I could breathe myself out of it. And I followed my training and calm myself down and breathe myself out of it. But yeah, I had a panic attack at 6 months because it was such a big change.
Was what scared you just the fact that you thought that you would be devoting your whole life to this one thing, and all of a sudden that changed course? Like, where do you think that panic really came from?
I think it was realizing that, I didn't ever plan it. Like, I just thought I'd be a firefighter till, I died,
Yeah, like if someone told 20-year-old Tony that you'd be doing mortgages one day.
Yeah. I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
So, and at the time, I didn't love school, and firefighting and the seeking of knowledge came from when I realized it was so much to learn. And I ended up getting my associate's degree and almost my bachelor's degree in fire science just because I really devoted myself to education. So when you've got all of this training that you spent 21 years develop, well, actually 20, at the time it was 23, 24 years because I had 2 years of volunteer before I actually went to the 21-year career. And you're just like, I've got all of this knowledge and I'm choosing to do something completely different that I almost have no knowledge in.
Yes, but I think what might surprise people is something that you've talked about in how there are things from being a firefighter that were applicable to this new career and things that you were able to carry over. And then saying that out loud probably to the average person would be like, how can you compare the two? But how do you think that your skills as a firefighter helped with sales and the new endeavor that you embarked on?
So remember all of those points to that question because I want to address them all. And I'll hit the first point to that question is the skills that were needed. And one of them is to be a firefighter, you have to be a really great problem solver because they teach you the tools, how to use the tools, what your tools are. They teach you the operating guidelines, which is also similar to loans. There's guidelines. I'm used to dealing in guidelines, but they teach you these tools, but no fire is the same.
Right.
No emergency is the same. We had a guy stuck in a tree, and you say, well, what's that? An emergency? Well, it was after a storm, and a branch had hit the power line, and he was getting shocked, and that power line had not, tripped. The transformer had not tripped, and he's holding on with just his shirt, trying to hang on. And what do you do if you touch that? If you touch that tree, you're dead. You're grounded. So we threw a rope up to him. We taught him how to tie it off, and we asked him to climb down and jumped off. And those are the kind of things that you can't prepare someone for in fire academy, right? So that problem solving, relates to helping someone get their home. And I realized that in order to help someone get their home, I had to figure out a lot of problems. Sometimes it's too little income to just the house. And sometimes their income to afford the house is okay, but they have too much debt, or they don't have enough down payment to make it work, or the job history. So it's just a matter of trying to figure out all of these things, sort through the problems, try to put it together, and figure out what loan will help them. Because this is not about sales for me.
Right.
Like the other relating thing is I still get to help people. Mm-hmm. That's been my calling. I didn't realize it, when I was younger, but I just want to make people's lives better. That's really what it is. And that's why firefighting was so important. That's why this is so important. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you're with people as a firefighter, you're with people at their worst moments. And you wouldn't think maybe customer service, firefighting, you might not think the two, but I'm with someone's grandma, someone's child while they're passing away. And I know that's a very tough subject, but how dare I not be the absolute best human being at that moment of those person's lives? And then you're not just treating that person, you're treating their family. And as a leader, you're treating your people, your other firefighters with you, because they're being exposed to so much trauma at that moment. And that's one of the things that really sets certain people apart, because I could have had a lot of traumatic injuries from that and post-traumatic stress, and instead my faith really helped me with post-traumatic growth. And it's a concept that I'll be going into throughout this podcast, and that translates directly to empathizing with people going through this situation. What's interesting is what I realized quickly is I'm not just empathizing with a home buyer, but there's a home seller too. And I may not deal with that home seller, but I am dealing with the buyer and their agent, and the home seller and their agent. And I have to treat them all to make sure that they all have the confidence that they're going to get their paychecks, that the house is going to sell, that they're going to get a house. And that relates very well to this job. So I think I answered all those points.
Yeah, you did. And you obviously got to that point where it wasn't an identity crisis anymore. You were realizing that you were still realizing your purpose of helping people, just in a different way.
Right.
But other than 6 months in, when you had that panic attack and you were like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Is there one challenge that stands out to you the most in adjusting to this new career after just doing a whole 180? That's something that maybe you think could help other people dealing with the same thing?
Well, there was. And there's many.
I'm sure.
But I can tell you one. As a firefighter, you show up, da-da-da-da, like I'm in uniform. You go into an office, everyone's like, oh, the firefighters are here, and everyone pretty much likes you when you show up, even just to show up, do an inspection or
Yeah, you're a hero.
Or, we're regarded, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'm used to, showing up, and it's like da 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 da, and in this business it's so different because I think that there could be a better viewpoint from some realtors to using the vendors that help them with their business. And at the time, I think I'd entered a time that we were less regarded, especially if you're new. So you might show up and people might like you, but then you might show up and you think everything is great, but there's someone that just, for whatever reason, like you're doing all you can, but they just don't necessarily like or want to use you. And of course, when you're new, you don't understand why. So it kind of offends you. Like, not that them, but like it makes you feel bad.
Was that tough? Like, did you let that get to you? Like, was it hard to not take things personally? Yeah.
It was at first. And then I realized something that was very, and I don't know where I came upon this realization, but I realized that when you're working with someone that you don't really align with, right? Not that you don't like them, but it's just not clicking.
Yeah.
It can take 4 to 6 times longer than working with the people that you do. And I put this across my social media too, because, if my political side is this or that, I really don't put that out there. But one thing that I will always put out there is that I'm a Jesus follower. And it's been known for people, to not like post your religion or whatever. And I don't care, because what I realized is the more people that don't align with me, I've got 5,000 Facebook followers. I've got a lot of followers now. And I realize, like, if you don't like me, it's okay. And
right.
I'm okay with it.
Well, and by being who you are up front and being your most authentic self from the get-go, by the time somebody approaches you, you pretty much can guarantee that they at least feel like they could align with you. Right.
And so if they don't like it, they can unfollow me, and that way it gives more room for the people that can or that do. And it was a very hard adjustment and realization that just, you know what? So this is it, to boil it down to a very short point. Not everyone's going to like you, and it's okay.
I struggle with that one. Because
you're not going to like everybody else either,
Yeah,
so,
no, it's true. You really had to kind of just become Teflon to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and not even, just realize that it like you said, it's just like it's okay.
Yeah,
you have your right to not align with me too.
Right. Yeah, and it's you're very upfront with your personality and your brand. I mean, you are your brand. You are representing your business by just being who you are.
Right.
And I think that with you, what you see is what you get, which is a great thing. And like I said, so it's kind of like, I think sometimes when people are in sales and they're trying to put on a certain face or come off a certain way in order to get that client or customer or whatever it is, you don't do that. Which I think is commendable. Like you're very authentically yourself.
Right. I'm not trying to make a sale. I'm trying to make people happy.
For sure.
And part of just what you said is so important, because I do a lot of coaching with agents now, because I've realized that, like I said, that the patient isn't just the buyer. Sometimes the realtors really need someone to really be beside them and help them and be an accountability person. And with all the leadership training and everything, I've been to so much realty training because I dove into this too. And I wanted to become, I realized I had to become also the best realtor maybe in the mix, so that I could, or at least the most educated that I could be, so that I could understand what they need. So part of my coaching is personal branding. And one of the things that I tell people is it's okay to be yourself. Let's find out who that is and make that your brand.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes that's the hardest part for people is like, I want to brand myself, but first it's like you have to know who you are. And that's usually the biggest struggle.
Right. And people talk about the why, your big why.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's there's 2 whys. Right? Why do you exist? Why do you live and breathe? Why do you need to make a paycheck? A lot of times that's your family, your kids, your dog, your whatever it is. Sometimes when people are retired, it's because they want to travel, right? But everyone has a
Their
why.
Yeah.
But then you got to find the why this. Why is this the mechanism you're going to provide for your why? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know why you're doing your job and you can't articulate that, how can you convince someone that you're the person?
For sure.
Right.
And as much as I know that your why is helping people,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it is sales. And I want to get into some of that sales and business stuff. That's how we met, is through
Right.
networking, building relationships. And look what it's led to. You ended up coming to the Haven. Academy Mortgage ended up donating $5,000. You guys spent a day with our clients. And I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So can you elaborate a little bit on the importance of that, putting yourself out there, building those relationships, and why it's so necessary?
Well, absolutely. Unless you are just out there for money, right? Even if you are just there for money, there's just no way people are going to work with you until they know, like, and trust you. And I realized that mortgages are tough, right? I'm good at it, but it's not necessarily fun doing mortgages on a computer.
And the paperwork.
And I can't call that specific thing my calling, but what I can call my calling is the helping of the people, right?
Yes.
And how do I take that and spend my time wisely, and how do I be me out in the field? And it took a long time to figure it out, because I would show up at offices and, like I said, just, hey, you do want to work with me? And then I realized that people just have needs. There was something that was said to me by one of my former CEOs, and it was said at a conference we were at. And this is what flipped the switch for all of this. There was a statistic, some kind of study or some kind of correlation, but they were talking about job satisfaction, and they were talking about bullies and childhood bullies and all of the things that happens with the kid that's bullied and all the things that leads to, and the bully themselves. But what they had come up with at the time, and I can't tell you this is true today, but the number one correlation at the time that was told to me was that childhood bullies correlate mostly to parents' job satisfaction.
Interesting.
And that really just, man, I had to take some time. I don't know why, but it just hit me, because kids are so important. And I really, happiness is so important to people. And I was bullied when I was a kid, and I mean, occasionally, not something crazy, but I can resonate with that. And then I also realized that there are people in this industry that some are happy, some are not happy. And how do I go out and make that change for people, right? I mean, a lot of people don't realize, but the reason why I want to make people happy, I want to not just me make them happy. I want to help coach, teach, and educate them and show them who they are, and find something that puts them on a path to fulfillment, which creates happiness in their life, so that they go home to their family and their family is happy too. And maybe the kids won't result in bullying, and maybe they'll have an incredibly happy life and spread that cheer too. So I know it's very deep, but
no,
believe it or not,
it's truly, it's crazy how it's such a domino effect.
Yeah.
You think parent job satisfaction and kid bullying, at first people might be like, what? But
it makes
when you
sense.
think about it, if the parent
sense.
isn't coming home every day feeling fulfilled, that can translate into a lot of different moods, happiness not being at the forefront of them. And then when you're a kid like that and you're around that, that's all you absorb.
Right. Right.
And that's the example you have to follow.
Right.
So when you see your parent at the end of the day and that you say, how was your day? And they're like, oh, it was fine. It was a Monday. I made it through.
Or if they just come back angry.
Yeah.
Because they take it on their family. You never know, right, what people go through.
Yeah.
And that's why you always treat people great, because you never know what they're going through, right?
You never know.
And as a firefighter, I spent so much time donating my time to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and did that for 21 years, the boot drive, and we went to camp, and and we were the muscle for the kids to pick them in and out of the pool, and I got to meet so many amazing people, and one of the things, and this relates to the Haven, one of the things that I realized that people that have special ability, right, or is they just want to be treated like you or
Like
me.
all of us.
They don't want to be ignored because people are uncomfortable to look at them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be stared at either.
Right.
They just want you to come up to them like you would anybody.
Yes.
So that taught me during that time I want to go meet them. I want to know who they are. I want to interact. I want them to realize they have a friend, another friend, And so it was so important and amazing to come to the Haven.
Yeah.
Because that's just what makes me happy. I love like the proms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those things, gosh, if I can just make a smile, I'd love to go dance with them and interact and talk to them. And that fills my heart. Like,
yeah.
It may be filling theirs too, but it's almost a selfish thing because it fulfills me to interact with people.
Yeah.
Because I just have such a great appreciation for people like that,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. People always say there's no such thing as a selfless good deed. And I feel like to some extent that's true because it just makes you feel so good doing it. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was right when you joined our BNI chapter that you were like, hey, my company wants to do this volunteer thing. Can I come take a tour of the Haven like tomorrow? And I was like, what are you talking about? You were like, I want to donate to you. It has to happen at I want to do it now. And I was like, who is this guy? What is he talking about? Yeah. And it was before I really even knew anything about you. And you show up at the Haven and
with a film crew,
meet all the guys, and then get your corporate to do a $5,000 donation match. And then it resulted in $10,000 between that and our BNI chapter, all just from you saying, I like to give back. I like to help. And then doing it. Because people can say that all the time.
And we had no idea what was going to result in, but we're going to try.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that adds, and you can, you don't have to be humble when you answer these things because I want this to be able to help other people in business too. And they should be able to follow your advice. But do you think that being a company and a person who gives back like that, and being a do-gooder, do you think that's contributed to your success?
Absolutely. And there's a BNI principle, giver's gain. And I didn't know that. I've never heard that coined principle until I entered a BNI group.
Yeah, same.
But it's so true. It's biblical principle.
Yeah, the golden rule.
Given you shall receive. Treat others like you would like to be treated.
Yeah.
Those are the two of and love God with all your heart, right? Those are the principles that I live by every day. And I really feel like if you're treating people like that, other people see it. You're helping people. And back to sales, when I bring that kind of, I don't know, giving or helping or how can I serve you mentality to an agent or a new realtor or anybody in business. I mean, we've even coached other businesses at this point because it's so applicable to every business, every sales business, even every business owner. And how can I serve you? And what I realize is a lot of times they don't have the confidence of certain things. You teach them how to have confidence. I've got a couple people that I work with, and I just call them because I know when they get a couple of contracts that they stop prospecting, and I'll call them and I'll be like, how many people you talked to today? Because it matters. But if you give, I don't want to just ask you for business. I want to give you so much that you feel that there's no other place that you can send it to than me, And it's not because of that. But I just hope that it comes back on the back end. But I don't demand it. And if it never comes back, it doesn't matter because I get to help somebody.
And you're not going to regret doing that.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. So if you lead with the principle of helping others and serving others, one of the things that I see as a mistake other people make, is they make themselves a hero. And it's very hard to lose yourself. It's very hard to not be egocentric. Humans are egocentric. But if you can be less self and make the other person the hero of the story, that's always going to come back more. And I see so many people say, look what I did, and post their numbers. And it's okay, because you have to have wins. You have to celebrate your wins.
For sure.
But if you can post what those numbers did for others, and it's not a brag, because people say, well, you know what? I like to give back, but I just don't like to tell anybody about it. Well, that's okay. That's your opinion. But don't also think that the people that give back, that are putting it out there, are doing it for themselves.
Right.
Because if you see me do something good for others and we make them the hero, maybe that inspires other people to do the same. To stand up. Because some people don't know how to stand up, and they look at this and they go, oh, look, he did reefs. That's a great thing. I'll put one under my dock. It cleans the waters, you know?
Yeah, or people want to volunteer, but they just don't know where to start, or what organization, or where to look.
They see the haven, you know? So I was taught that by one of the people that actually approached me at Academy Mortgage. I went there and they said, hey, you're the guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I heard you're the guy that likes to give back. I was like, well, I do, you know? Well, we'd like to support that. And that's when...
That was when we did that thing, yeah.
Yeah. And he says, but we don't want you to be quiet about it, and we don't want you to tell them it was Academy Mortgage. We just want you to go do it and show other people that you're doing it, so other people want to stand up and do that too.
It's cool that you work for a company like that.
That is pretty cool.
Because it wasn't for Academy Mortgage. It wasn't...
They don't even care to be recognized for it, you know?
No, because I remember, you know, there were going to be like these big videos and all this big stuff on Academy Mortgage Social, and like there really wasn't any. Like, it wasn't for you guys.
No, but what we did is we put it out amongst our own company, so that other people could see how to stand up to the other employees with us, you know? And
probably it just makes them feel good to know that that's the culture of the place that they're working for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you said when, you know, if you have a guy on your team, and even if they sign a couple contracts, you want to stay on them and make sure that they're still calling and growing. And how do you stay motivated to keep growing and learning all the time as things are evolving and changing? Especially, you know, like earlier we were talking about ChatGPT and like how crazy things are getting right now. I mean, what motivates you to keep being your best and learning more and teaching others?
Well, I love knowledge and education, and for instance, when I first learned I needed to start using computers, right? That when the computers were really not everywhere, right? I just built one. I learned how to build it, because that way I know everything about it, right? And that's how I do this. So when it comes to keeping motivated, I look for other leaders for inspiration, people like Jocko Willink. I like to watch a lot of podcasts. I mean, this job's super stressful, and so part of that has really taken a toll on me over the past few years, you know. So I'm spending countless hours also in my spare time researching, you know, what's the best methods to get myself back to where I want to be. And I go to church. You know, I go to a Bible study on Mondays. We attend two services on Sunday, two different services on Sunday, and we pray as a family, and we try to surround ourselves. You know, one of the things that I had to do also was lose friends, right? Yeah. And I mean, they're friends, and I like them. It's not because I don't like them, but they weren't going the same direction as I was. And it's not that you lose friends, but they're just not in your life every day. And you find out when you're not out there, you know, doing all the nightlife stuff or this and that, your phone stops ringing, and you realize that you just have to be okay with that and find. And the hardest part, though, is the lonely spell until you find the right people to put back in it. Yeah. And you should always be putting someone back in it that you're looking up to. And that's where I find more inspiration is putting certain friends back in. And I've met some really great friends, and they've inspired me. I've met some really great people in real estate, and I look what they do, and I learn what they do, and I just take classes and try to be better than I was yesterday every day.
Yeah.
So that's really how I stay motivated. And I know if I need it, everybody needs it. So then I try to help motivate other people if they want it, right? I'm not going to force it down their throat, but I know the people that are in need. And that's something also that I really got from being a firefighter. I was around a lot of horrible situations.
Yeah.
And a lot of hard times and a lot of people at their end of their life, right? And I believe that, through God, through the experience, that I've become very, very empathic. So I can almost tell when somebody needs something and it's time to call. So I pay attention. It's, you're not just a number in my database. You're a friend.
Yeah.
And I care about you.
Yeah.
And because I care, I'm going to do better next year and next year and always climb that mountain. I just, that's what I've done. My dad worked his knuckles to the bone till he died, and I used to work with him at 12 years old, picking up cigarette butts in Kmart shopping center that's no longer there in Venice, and picking up disgusting things out of ditches and cleaning the shopping center. And it was just so gross. And at 12 and 13 and 14, and I really worked for 10 years before I became a firefighter, doing mowing lawns and different jobs and printing silkscreen shirts and Comcast and just busboy, like so many crazy things. And I realized that, man, my dad showed me real work ethic, but he didn't, he only had what he put aside. And I realized I didn't want to do that. I wanted to find a job that had a career, or I wanted to find a work that was really a career and that would take me places. And he also inspired me to do that because he showed how hard you work, how hard work is. So that's really helped me continue to grow and always better myself,
Yeah. So we're talking about the things that make us better, the things that you do, put the time in, the hours in to make yourself better. I want to talk about setbacks and overcoming those. You talked about having your panic attack and using the techniques that you learned as a firefighter, the breathing techniques to get through stuff like that. What are some of your other tools in your toolkit that you think you could share with others to overcome a setback, whether it's personal or professional?
Well, I think God is the number one tool. Faith. It's proven that if somebody is in the hospital and they're sick and they have faith, it's proven that the faith of a medicine, the faith of placebo, it's proven that faith heals you. So it does that too with setbacks, right? Because I've been through some pretty big setbacks. The largest setback I had was when my dad passed away, and it was pretty tough. And that was a real religious experience for me because I was out doing things that I shouldn't be doing. I was drinking. I was going out partying. I was drowning myself out there and having fun with those friends that aren't, in the life as much anymore. And the whole time, I would come home at 2 a.m. and I'd be praying on my knees, crying to Christian, music, right? To contemporary music. And I had been going to church, and I was always in the back row because I went from Catholic to being Christian, and it was just very, I was just in the back row. I felt uncomfortable. People are raising their hands up front. I'm like, I'm never going to raise my hands. Like, what is that, So it was just so different. But that time, that hard time, I leaned so hard on my faith for so long, and I was just on my knees saying, why aren't you changing this? Why isn't this changing? And what I realized is my faith had expanded to be bulletproof because I'm sitting there on my knees at 2:00, and I felt that God said to me, guess what, dummy? I didn't change the situation, but look at you. You were in the back, now you're in the front. You'd never raise your hands, now you raise your hands. You would never be praying to me at 2 a.m. in the morning before this, and now you are. You listen to contemporary Christian music in your truck almost exclusively. What do you mean? I didn't change anything. I changed you. And so faith is so important to have, because without faith, what is there, right? So I would say the first thing when you're going through any kind of setback is faith, because we cannot determine in my world what the rates are doing, what the house prices are doing. We can't determine how many people want to buy today, or we can't determine that. We can only determine what we're in control of. And if we think we're alone in that, it's a very lonely place. So to have faith is important. Family is super important. And what I really feel bad about is that people don't really have family, and we have a small family, but I have an amazing family.
Yes.
And if you don't have a family, come be my family, right? And I think having friends that are there to pick you up, that see you, that aren't just there for the fun. Surrounding yourselves with friends in setbacks is so huge. And a lot of times people, in a contract, there's a time frame. And we will have a problem come up that is totally unexpected. And I could react to it. And I could call everybody and go, oh my gosh, there's a problem. Right? Well, what good does that do? Because one, I don't have an answer yet. And sometimes you have to sit and be still and think and work through it, let your brain work through the problem, and you will find an answer. And if that answer is there is no answer, then you have to make that call. But if you are able to save something and fix something in a setback and no one needs to know, you don't need to tell anybody. You just know that you did it, you accomplished it, and you move forward. So I think that, and digging into knowledge, if you the more knowledge you have, the more things you can fix. So
it's funny, the being still thing. Our culture definitely does not encourage the stillness, but there's so much value in the stillness.
Right.
And slowing down to do more.
It's a funny sales language, right? Sometimes you have to say things in a different way, and if you're working with someone who is buying your product, and there are some times where you just have to say a certain thing and wait for them to have a response, because that awkward silence sometimes is what's needed to determine their desire to proceed,
Yeah. And I know that you wanted to touch on that role of, communication and persuasion in sales. How often do you find yourself having to use the persuasion part of it?
So it's interesting because I don't want to convince anybody to do anything that they don't want. But nobody, the average person buying a house has no idea of what is in a mortgage. And they have no idea. They may have a small idea that houses give equity back, and they may have a small idea that it could be good, but it's also scary for people. I talked to a guy today who was cutting my hair, by the way, and he waited till he was retired to become a home buyer, and he had a VA loan, which would have been a lot easier for him to do it, but he was so nervous because no one had taken the time
because of the unknown,
right? So the persuasion part comes, in my opinion, is not hey, you want to buy this house?
Buy this from me, yeah.
Buy this house, right?
Yeah.
It's not that. How can I show them if in fact it is truly smart for them to do it? How can I put it to them and pack it in a way that they fully understand and educate them on what happens when you wait and property values go up and it's more expensive to buy next year? What happens if you're not buying, it sounds counter intuitive to buy in a higher rate market, even though rates are about average over the past, we're still under the average of the 30 years, right? But people say, oh, I'm not going to ever buy until we get to 2 or 3% again. That may never happen again.
Right.
And you just miss out an opportunity. But if you buy when the rates are higher, there's less competition. Mm-hmm. You can get more seller incentives. You can get, not necessarily because the house prices really aren't reducing. House values aren't going to go anywhere.
Right.
And as soon as the rates go down, they're going to go right back up because we're going to have the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to have it where everybody has fear of missing out, and they go, when we get to the 5%, everyone's going to go buy a house. And so to know that and to teach that, to show people enough information for them to pick the right thing for them, that is to me what the best part of the art of persuasion is. And now there's also language, because you just never know. And I talk to realtors about how to, talk to clients, because there's a lot of clients that come out, they want to shop for a house, and they have no idea, not the first idea, whether they can afford it, whether their job history allows it, whether they should, or how much they can afford. So they'll go try to get a realtor to go show them a house. And, so the realtors have to know at least the right questions to ask people, not to qualify you as a person, but to see if there's real potential that we can help serve you, right? And some of those things are very specific things like, hey, are you working with a realtor? It's very important to ask. Are you, and I say, a lot of people say, oh, are you pre-approved? Well, that's a very easy question to say yes to, both of them. But if you say the difference of what realtor are you working with, it's super hard for a client to just drum up a name and lie.
Right.
Right. Because most people's first response is honest.
Yeah.
And who are you pre-approved with? And if they can't think of it,
more
they're
specific
say,
questions.
I'm not, right? And by the way, if we get you pre-approved, it's what you want. We find the house that you want. Are you going to buy it? And that's where the silence comes in. Because you also have to determine their desire to own a house. Right. Right. So sales is super important for persuasion and language to get to be able to serve that person right. Because if they're really never going to buy a house, it's not that you're wasting your time on them, but you're making $0 as a commission salesperson when people are just kicking tires and all they're trying to do is waste your time. They don't even realize sometimes it's not malicious. Right. They're not really thinking how if they're wasting your time.
No. Like, I can't wait to meet with this guy and waste his time.
Yeah, they're not thinking that. It's not
No.
But they do, because inadvertently, they're really not ready.
They're just not being intentional with their actions.
Yeah. Go to an open house.
Yeah.
Right?
Start there.
At that time, right? Go to an open house. If you're not really going to buy, don't spend an agent's hard time away from their family when they're not going to earn something back, so.
If you could answer this in a few words, what is it about you that makes your clients trust you? Simple.
I care.
And how do you show that?
They can hear it in my voice. They can hear it in my tone. They can hear it when I listen. You show you care by listening. Yeah. And asking the right questions if they're not saying the right things. Yeah.
And I feel like we've covered a lot personally and professionally about you, your beliefs, your approach to sales, your approach to life. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, who are you hoping listens to this? And out of that audience, what are you hoping that they get from this podcast, this thing that you're starting? Why? What is your why for this?
My why for this is if I can help. I love this. The fire up your life. Right?
Love it.
If I can help you feel, if I can, I don't want to help, I don't want to make you feel happy. Like that's in my job, but I want to show you why you should be happy. And lead you to things that creates happiness, whether it's in your job, whether it's your family, whether it's in your life, or whether it's, purchasing a home, right? Yes, my main income stream is from being a loan officer. And it's super important. That's, I would love to help serve as many people into every kind of loan that they need, but it's really about them. And I would love to help as many realtors push their needle forward as far as they can and help them increase their business and help them be happy about it so that they can all go home to a happy home where kids decide to have a happy life. And pursuing that into coaching and speaking aspect. There's a lot of stories that we're getting ready to put into a book. It's, in my spare time, right?
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of stories to unpack, and they're so valuable about overcoming. And I just want to share that you can be happy, you can be successful, you can have a great family, you can increase your faith, you can increase your wealth, you can overcome trauma. People have told so many people, like PTSD. And yes, it is true and it's out there. But sometimes I think when I was a firefighter growing up, all I heard was post-traumatic stress. So I would immediately think, I've been subjected to this trauma. I must later on going to have stress. It just makes sense because that's what they talk about. So we would have so many post-traumatic stress debriefings around acute situations.
Yeah.
No one would go home until they debriefed. And especially as a leader, I would not let anyone go home until they debriefed. And what I found after telling these stories that will be in the book is that I grew. I had post-traumatic growth. I didn't even know that was a thing coming up. And I want to be able to tell people that depending on your outlook, you can change that stress into growth. And that's really what I'd like to help people with.
I feel like that's a perfect place to wrap it up.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I can't wait for the great news
Yeah, I'm excited.
on the next podcast
I'm excited.
that I'll be asking you a lot about.
That's going to be fun. And sorry, I hope you knew that going into this, I wasn't going to really stick to your questions. I just can't. I'm not capable of that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But they were all based on the stuff that people had asked. So it's perfect. It was perfect.
Well, and it's funny too,
because
my pleasure. It's funny because I remember when I was a reporter, people would always ask, and you talked about, you show you care by listening.
Yeah.
And when I was a reporter going to do a story, people would always ask, can I get a list of your questions ahead of time? And I would say no. And they'd say, why? And I would say, I don't write my own questions ahead of time.
Right.
Because when I have my questions totally written down, I'm not even listening to your answer. I'm thinking about, okay, well, when are they going to stop so I can ask the next question I have written down?
Right.
And then I think some of the best questions come out of the answers and listening.
Absolutely.
There were things that I asked you about today that I had no idea I was going to ask you about because of the direction you took it in. So,
well, I love it. And we talked about double clicking, right? That was something that I never heard of until I really started thinking, and it's something that I talk to people about is like when you're talking to someone and they say something, double click on that, go deeper.
Right.
So again, I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
It was great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'll be back.
All right. Can't wait. If you have any more questions, if any of this interests you, if you feel that you would benefit from any of this, please smash the subscribe button and leave me a comment.